Hello there, landlords. It's Nicole, your landlord advocate. So today I want to follow up on my last video about landlord use and the eviction process and what really happens when a tenant disputes the eviction process and how things could go sideways really quick when it comes to serving an eviction notice. So first off, your landlord education is your number one priority. I have been sharing with landlords over and over again, you must become informed. You have to really inform yourself with the information that you need just in case you're faced with a dispute and having to pay the tenant back a full year's rent. So let's move through this. So there are usually two types of disputes with this. There is a dispute that happens when you serve the tenant the notice to vacate. So either you serve the tenant and the tenant then goes into a dispute process, like they start a dispute against you and they have now 30 days to start that dispute, or you may face a dispute after the tenant moves out and then you're on the line for quite a bit, 1 year's rent. So while you may not be on the line for 1 year's rent when the tenant is still living in the property, you actually have to be careful about the steps that you're taking along the way when you serve a tenant a landlord use notice. So this by far is one of the most popular disputes. A lot of landlords are faced with this and they feel like they're being penalized and they are just feeling really powerless and just kind of really discouraged about the process overall because they feel like the process is more skewed towards a tenant. But really, it's about how you educate yourself along the way that's going to protect you. So if the tenant is still living in the property and the tenant disputes a notice, you're going to have to mount an extremely powerful case. You cannot take it for granted that it is your property and you have the right to get your property back. And I think by far, a lot of landlords have the incorrect mindset when it comes to how they're dealing with these things. The landlords need to deal with it according to the law, and according to the law, you have to have a very high burden of proof that is going to prove that you're acting in good faith. So the onus is on the landlord to prove that you're acting in good faith, even before the tenant moves out. So right now, a landlord is consulting with me because he served a landlord use notice and the tenant is disputing the notice. And now we have to mount a very, very powerful body of evidence and documentation process in order for us to then show up in the hearing and prove that he's acting in good faith. And this is really important. It's just not a matter of just uploading 2, 3 pieces of documents and that's that. You really have to take it seriously. And the moment you get a dispute filed against you, you shouldn't just let the paper just sit around and not do anything. And I think by far, landlords take way too long to act, to protect themselves, and to prepare themselves correctly. So once again, if the tenant disputes the notice before the tenant moves out and the tenant wins, the tenant gets to stay in the unit. They gets to stay on your property. And if you then think about serving another landlord use notice, it's going to be so difficult for you to then mount a body of evidence to win against a tenant because the tenant has already won against you. This is where getting someone who knows tenancy laws and how to prepare your documentation is so crucial and so important. So by and large, you should have at least 20 to 30 minimum pieces of evidence as it relates to you proving your case. And this is minimum. Usually with the landlords, I'm helping them prepare between 50 and more pieces of documentation so that they are going to be mounting a very, very strong case. You have to prove that you are going to get your property back lawfully. And if you don't prove that, once again, the tenant will win. They get to stay in the property. So let's talk about now what happens when the tenant moves out. So they may have peacefully moved out. Usually, what's going on right now in the marketplace is the tenant, they are actually following the landlords around. A lot of landlords don't realize this, but the tenant is following the landlords on social media and on social media platforms. The tenants are more invested in trying to get money from the landlords. And by and large, there are many great landlords and many great tenants. But there's a subsection of tenants and a subsection of landlords that usually cause a whole lot of problems for all of us. And the tenants that are trying to penalize the landlords because they are assuming that the landlord is not acting in good faith, they're going to follow the landlord around on social media. They're going to follow your social media profiles. And I can't tell you how many landlords just leave themselves just available to tenants who are following them around. And then the tenant all of a sudden see that they've posted a new ad, which again is against the law. So I'm not necessarily encouraging that. I'm encouraging that you just need to protect yourself because you could be acting in a certain way. The tenant is understanding that, and then they're mounting an entire body of evidence against you. They're filing a dispute against you, and then now you have, this huge fine against you, potential fine against you. You're going to have to now think about how you're going to win. So it's important that you protect yourself when you are faced with being fined a tenant's lawsuit against you, and now you have to go into a legal process. To win a legal process where the tenant has moved out and now they've caught you doing something. So either, you didn't move in when you were supposed to, you might have needed to renovate the property and you thought, okay, well, I already gave the tenant the eviction notice. I'm going to take forever to move in. So there's sometimes that, or some extenuating circumstance might have happened where you might have moved in and then you had to move out and then the tenant caught you in between that. And or another circumstance could have happened where you might have faced some sort of family emergency and then you had to not go through with the intended purposes. And you have to prove all that. You have to ensure that you have so much documentation to prove that you were actually acting in good faith, but there were a part of an extenuating circumstance that you had to change course. And it is not that you were attempting to evict the tenant for the purpose of, for example, raising the rent and or because you didn't like the tenant and or because of another reason, but you are going to have to prove your case in a way that it is so beyond a shadow of a doubt and the reasons behind what it is that you're saying with regards to your position. So what's really important here is that if you don't have tenancy education, you're going to be stuck. If you're not consulting with someone who has tenancy education, you're going to be stuck. If you don't know really how to build a very strong case, you're going to be stuck. You should be educating yourself along the way. You should know the tenancy laws or just have a good working idea around tenancy laws. It should be that you are investing in yourself, including if you need to get support and someone to advocate on your behalf. This is really important. So it's a process right now that a lot of landlords are being caught up because they lack tenancy education and or they're not getting the proper support. They just don't have the proper correct information. And the arbitrators, they don't buy that. They don't buy that you just didn't know. You didn't, oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, I'm just a new landlord. They don't buy that. If you're gonna get into the landlord business, you're gonna have to become a professional and you're going to have to educate yourself correctly. So, because I attend 2 to 3 hearings a month, I know exactly how they think. They're very black and white. They operate most often, according to the procedural way that the law works. So, if you're not able to prove your case correctly, more than likely, you won't win your case. So here's hoping that more landlords are investing in themselves. They are investing in their education. They act like a business and like a professional in how they are with their tenancies. And if you do this, if you make this something that you do on a daily basis and a regular basis, even if you are an expert at something else. Here's an example. So some landlords are also real estate agents. And of course, they are real estate agents. They don't know tenancy laws. And or some landlords, um, they come to me, and even if they work somehow in the real estate business and they don't know tenancy laws. Some landlords, they've hired a property management company that represents or helps them, and the property manager comes to me because I know more about tenancy laws than they do. So it's really important that no matter what it is that you might have as a designation, that you're ensuring that you know tenancy laws. If you're going to be in the landlord business, this is the best way to prevent getting into just this whole pickle where everything starts to go really sideways for you quickly. So let me know what your thoughts are on this video. Feel free to subscribe to this channel, share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, talk again real soon. Bye, everyone.